good, YouTube? Welcome back to JY's Adventures. Thank y'all so much for the continued support. Remember, you can accomplish anything you put your mind to. In this video, we got how to beat the death game in Choose or Die by Cinema Summary. I see y'all got a ton of reaction requests from my community tab post. I'm gonna check these videos out in the next few coming days, you know what I'm saying? Remember, I have two channels that I work on. I got my JY Poochie channel, I got my JY's Adventures channel. Next few days, I'll be posting for this channel, guys. As always, I'm excited to see what we got for this one, man. Cinema Summary with the crazy analysis and breakdown. Man, we gonna see what we got. If you're new to the channel, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Link to the original video is in the description. Without any further ado, let's go.
If you were cursed to play a video game that forces you to make brutal decisions and watch them happen in real life, what would you do? I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the cursed video game in Choose or Die. This man is screwed. Hal here is relaxing in his man cave and decides to turn on an old video game he picked up at a garage sale. He has no idea what to expect, but as the game begins, it asks the man whether or not he will seize his chalice. Pausing to think about what this could mean, he takes a sip from his beer without realizing that this one action just answered the game's first question. Curious to find out more, he leans forward to answer the next question, typing "fetch another" into the keyboard, when suddenly a freshly opened beer appears on his desk. He's officially weirded out, but the game won't stop and asks if he would like the lights on or off. He makes a choice and the lights shut off. Somehow, the video game has control over his entire house's power system, and he's amazed by how high-tech this is. But when he looks at the screen, the questions are starting to escalate. Now he must make a choice between his tongue or her ear. The man doesn't know what to do, as the game pressures him for an answer, telling him to choose or die. He tries to run away, but a loud noise blares from the speakers, and the only way to stop it is to make a decision. Worried, he walks out of the basement, calling out to his family, but that's when the man realizes he's just made the biggest mistake of his life. In the kitchen, his wife is holding a tongue in her hand, and his son is badly injured. His choice in the video game made them do it against their will, and it's only the first of 5 horrifying levels they need to beat in order to stay alive. Okay, this game is pure evil. It didn't even tell the man that he was torturing his own family, but there were plenty of signs that something bad was going to happen. First of all, watching a video game from the 80s control your house's power is way too suspicious to blindly accept. It's too risky to keep playing, but since there doesn't appear to be a countdown clock, we should take a moment to test the game's boundaries to understand what we're dealing with. If it were me, I would have tried turning the lights on and off manually, and taken out more drinks from the cooler to observe how these actions were being coded in the game. It sounds simple, but an experiment like this could help us understand how the game's reality and our reality are overlapping. For example, if this beer can be recognized by the computer, then it's safe to assume that it also has a digital representation of zeros and ones describing its basic shape, size, and position in the room. We should also expect that this would be a very low data representation because the game is so old. This is a really important point, because even though it's cursed, the evil is still coming from the game itself, and that means in some ways, it's bound to the limitations of 1980s technology. Now, as soon as we realize that this thing presents a real-world threat, and once we've tried turning it off, shutting it down, throwing our computer out the window, and all the obvious things any sane person would do, the smartest approach is to try crashing the game. Since it's reading real-life environments and interpreting them into source code, then I would attempt to crash the program by overloading it with information that the technology can't handle. Even modern AI struggles with this, and Tesla cars are the perfect example. In an interview, Elon Musk explained that if someone walked across the street with a stop sign on their t-shirt, a self-driving car would still stop, because it wouldn't be able to understand the difference between a real sign and one on a shirt. Now, putting this theory to the test, I would print out pictures of tongues and ears and put them all over the house to confuse the computer over which image was the original body part that needed to be cut. Every time a new picture is printed, there's more code being entered into this game that has to be classified as tongue, and it's forcing the program to do more computational work to differentiate it from the one in this kid's mouth. With this much information, it might be too much for the ancient technology to process, that it overloads its random access memory and crashes the program, stopping the game. There's a chance this won't work at all.
Given the death game, the computer death game, the blue screen of death, y'all.
Access memory and crashes the program, stopping the game. There's a chance this won't work at all, but you can't hit a target that you don't aim at, and it's way better than just accepting a fate worse than death. 3 months later, Kayla and her friend Isaac are hanging out and inspecting all the old technology the boy recently bought at a sale. Picking up a cardboard box, the girl discovers a bootleg cassette for a video game, and it's offering $125,000 to anyone that beats it. The kids think it's a joke, but it's too much money to ignore, so the girl decides to call the listed number. To their surprise, it's still in service, and the phone plays a pre-recorded message by Robert Englund, the famous Hollywood horror actor. It's a sign that this must be legit, and the kids get excited, but it's not what they think. As soon as Kayla finds out what the game really is, she'll regret ever opening the box. Sitting down at a bar, the girl converts the cursor video game to open it on her computer and boots it up. But when she looks at the screen, she's confused to find it asking if she would like coffee or cake. Pointing an arrow, it directs her attention to the diner menu, and strangely, those are the only items listed. It's creepy as hell, but she thinks she's just tired and chooses coffee. Suddenly, the waitress appears at her table, filling her cup to the brim, and it freaks the girl out. She looks back at the menu to ask about the items, but sees it's back to normal. The girl has no idea what's going on, and as the woman walks away, her last words appear on the monitor. It's scaring her, and when the game offers the next choice, she immediately shuts her computer screen, but as soon as she looks up, Kayla finds the entire room covered in a thick fog. In the distance, her dead brother appears, and he tells her she must choose or die. Terrified, Kayla opens the laptop and finds herself back in the bar, but the game is still forcing her to make a choice.
Imagine getting visited by one of your loved ones that passed away? Telling you to choose or die, fam?
And finds herself back in the bar, but the game is still forcing her to make a choice. She decides to take a break and types in yes, but as soon as she hits enter, the waitress begins dropping glasses onto the floor. The game is controlling her, and the next two choices quickly appear on the screen. Panicking, she chooses clean up, but the waitress suddenly drops to her knees, and Kayla realizes this is a trap. She runs across the room to save her, but a man suddenly gets in her way, screaming at her as a distraction. She pushes past him, but the girl is too late to help the waitress, and that's one level down, with 4 more to go. Okay, this is not going to end well. First of all, when you're being offered money for something that seems too good to be true, it's probably because it is, and you should put it down and walk away slowly. Now, to their credit, this mysterious video game company made the offer seem legit by printing it on a cheap and dirty box. It might seem counterintuitive, but this is so unpretentious that it's actually charming, and cash prizes were a common tactic to promote video games in the 1980s. They even hired Robert Englund, the original actor that played Freddy Krueger, which is perfect 80s nostalgia, so it's not surprising that they both got fooled. Now, it's too late to turn back because you've already been trapped into playing the game, so we need to develop a strategy for beating this before it gets any worse. Thankfully, there are important lessons we can learn from this level if we were paying attention. If you look here, you can see the border of the command line is filled with images of a cup before we ever see the waitress breaking glasses. This is important because the next time we get challenged to another level, we can use the images on the border as a clue and take in our surroundings to figure out what we'll be forced to do next. This might give us a bit more control of our own choices before the game forces us into making dangerous decisions. For example, if she knew the threat had something to do with glasses, she might think ahead and throw them all out of the restaurant, or keep everyone as far away from them as possible to reduce potential risk. The next observation is that if you look at how the people behaved in this restaurant, there seems to be 2 different ways the game will control a non-player character. NPC. The first is to force them to do something pre-programmed based on your choice, and the second is to make them run off script as a reaction to you. Now, what's interesting about this is that the one that required faster processing appeared glitchy, and this might give us an idea of where some of the game's technological limits are. As long as we are scared, we will move and think slowly, allowing the program to take its time. But if we interact quickly with the environment, the game will be forced to use more of its very little processing power to respond to us. Since one single jump out of the booth was enough to glitch this guy, I would try glitching other things in the game by making unpredictable movements and decisions, and find more ways to take advantage. Now lastly, since we know that people are going to get hurt from our decisions, I would make sure to keep friends and family away from me at all costs. If they're in the same room the game begins, they're bound to get hurt. So the smartest thing to do is make sure you only play the game in a room filled with people that you hate. This curse needs a target, and torturing your enemies is a lot better than exposing your loved ones to danger. So until we know how to outsmart this game, it's better to offer it victims that you don't mind hurting. Suddenly, an alarm rings out out, and Kayla wakes up the next morning in her bed, convinced it must have all been a dream. Walking to her door, she overhears a police officer talking to her mom about the bar, and is horrified to discover that the waitress died last night. It wasn't a dream after all, and the game isn't finished torturing her. She heads for her friend's place and explains what happened at the bar, but the boy laughs it off. It's too crazy to believe, and he thinks she's making it up to get attention, but there's no way to prove it until the game starts again. Frustrated, she asks where he got the cassette tape in the first place, and the guy doesn't know, but promises he'll help her find out. That night, Kayla clocks into work for her shift, but at 2 in the morning, the girl suddenly gets a call from her mom. She's terrified of a rat infestation in the walls of their apartment when the girl hears her mother screaming on the other end. That's when the lights in the building go out, and in the distance, a computer screen turns on. Kayla realizes that the game has just started level 2 and runs over as fast as she can, watching a 1-bed replica of her apartment load on the monitor. Her mom is hiding behind a door and calling for help as a giant rat searches for something to eat. Without any context, the game presents a simple choice: the living room or the bathroom, and the girl hesitates. She tells her mother to hide and chooses living room, thinking this will save her. But instead, the giant rat immediately runs closer. She's controlling the rat, and that gives Kayla an idea. Her next choice is bedroom or bathroom, and thinking quickly, the girl moves the rat to the bathroom further away. She instructs her mom to head for the front door, and the woman tries to escape, but that's when the rat finds her. Terrified, the mom runs back to her bedroom and locks it shut. The only option the girl has left is to either have the animal chew through the door or break it down. But that's when she comes up with another plan. Telling her mom to escape through the window, Kayla decides the rat should chew through the door and gives the woman time to jump to safety, making that 2 levels down with 3 more to go.
What?
Okay, this is escalating fast. Now we know that this game can follow you anywhere, and it doesn't even matter if you're alone or not. It's going to force you to keep playing, so we need to double down on finding solutions to beat this thing at its own game. Now, this level was quite different from the first one because there was an animation, and Kayla was able to talk to her mother and tell her what to do. This is an added layer of control she has in her decision making that she didn't have before, and if the girl had recognized the significance of that sooner, it would have made a big difference. Now, the last thing you want a sick older woman to do is run through a narrow hallway from a giant rat. Even with a head start, she's much more likely to get killed, and it would take way too long to find people willing to help her fight it off. The smartest approach here is to remember that this computer screen is not the final reality. Her apartment is filled with objects that don't show up here, and keeping this in mind, they can develop a better plan to survive. If it were me, assuming we made the same mistakes as Kayla, I would have instructed the mother to first barricade the door with the bed and place it horizontally so that there's no room for the door to swing open. Only when that's done would I make the rat chew the door down, buying the mother even more time to escape. While the rat is chewing, I would then have her move towards the window and start tying knots into her bed sheets, tying one end to something sturdy nearby. She can then use the extra time to climb down the cloth ladder to the apartment below her, and since it's a giant rat, it would be too heavy to climb down the outside wall to follow after her. Later, the girl goes to the hospital where her mom has been admitted for her injuries, and studies the game's code as she downloads it onto her phone. Now she'll be prepared to play anywhere, and deciding to let her mother rest, she goes back to the apartment to check the damages. Almost everything inside has been wrecked by the giant rat, but the last place it entered was the bedroom, and that means it should still be there. Walking over to the door, she bursts in with a broken bottle, but there's no sign of it anywhere. Suddenly, someone grabs her from behind, and Kayla turns around to see it's her mother's deadbeat boyfriend, Lance. He makes it clear that he'll have to report this damage to the landlord unless she has some fun with him, but the girl refuses. She doesn't want anything to do with him, and soon she's going to make him pay in the most gruesome way possible. That night, she visits her friend Isaac and shows the kid what happened to her apartment. It's undeniable proof that the game has the ability to affect the real world, but the girl has figured out a strange rule. She noticed that she was forced to play the second level at exactly 2 a.m., which was the same time she was given the choice between coffee or cake for level 1. That means the next game may also start at 2 a.m., and now they can plan ahead. Until then, they have no way to boot the program, and Isaac tells her that no one on the internet has ever heard of this game. The phone number for the prize has been delisted, and the only piece of evidence they can examine is the analog loading sound the cassette makes when it boots up. The boy plugs the tape into his computer, hoping to find out more about its code, and sits on the couch as they wait for 2 a.m. The kids try to stay positive, but they're interrupted by a horrifying digital screech. The game is going to start soon, and the
2
kids
a.m.?
analyze a sound wave displaying a strange series of characters. It's nothing that they've ever seen before, and with no command prompt, they're not sure if it's computer code or something completely different. Suddenly,
Jeez.
level 3 appears
Level
on the
3
screen,
is
and a
here.
new game has just
Oh,
begun.
no.
Isaac here thinks it's pretty cool, until he looks closer and is horrified
Of
to
course he
find the
does.
game predicting exactly what he's going to say before he says it. It asks him
What?
if he wants to help, and the girl warns him not to type anything into the computer, when suddenly, the words choose or die flash into the monitor, and Kayla starts screaming in agony. She begs him to make it stop, and he gets up to help her, now realizing they've just given the game an answer to its first question. Okay, these guys are not taking this seriously. Even though Kayla's mother nearly got killed by a giant rat, they spent
was
their
having
valuable
fun.
downtime literally having a food fight instead of doing everything they can to think of ways to prepare for the game. One of the biggest advantages they have is realizing that it won't start until 2 a.m. because it
2
means they have
a.m.
time to plan ahead. This gives them more ways to reduce the risks they might be exposing themselves to, and if it were me, I would be very careful to choose where I play, who I have around, and what items are in the room that I have at my disposal. Now, even though it's a good strategy, it's not going to be easy decision making, because you might wish you had a weapon in the rat game, but that same weapon on any other level could be something used against you, making it way too dangerous.
By
If
the
it were me,
NPCs.
I would choose an environment that was in a very public place with lots of exits where everyone was a stranger, because
Wide
more
and
witnesses
open.
would be around to stop something bad from happening, and if anyone
Right.
gets hurt, it's nobody I know. Secondly, I would make sure I brought some useful and non-lethal items like a taser gun, an emergency rope ladder, or a window breaker. Now, it's
Okay.
also important to point
You
out
getting a
that this
taser?
girl's a nerd. She knows how to code,
Don't tase me,
refurbish
bro.
old equipment, and even design an emulator for a 40-year-old software. With this in mind, it's very likely that she's a gamer as well, and she should be using her knowledge to help her cheat.
Is that edited in, y'all? By Cinema Summary? Is that like Skyrim or Dark Souls? I think it's Skyrim. my brain is a little fuzzy with like a lot of these games and stuff like that, bro.
It's very likely, and even design an emulator for a 40-year-old software. With this in
Oh,
mind, it's
cool.
very likely that she's a gamer as well, and she should be using her knowledge to help her cheat. Surprisingly, there are some tactics that might apply here, and one of them is glitching. For those of you who don't know, glitching is when someone discovers a bug in a game that they can exploit. There are some great examples in
I think
modern
that was
gaming, and a
Bloodborne.
lot of them are used in speedruns, but perhaps the most
Mario.
appropriate example is for one of the most classic games of all time, called Zork, The Great Underground Empire. This
Never
was a
heard of it.
text-based game very similar to Cursor, and took you through an
Oh.
interactive adventure where every decision would affect the final outcome. It just so happens that players found a glitch in the programming that let them enter a secret room below a boss fight and type
Okay.
Get Stiletto, helping you steal the character's weapon and use it against him. Now, the lesson we can
So
learn from
glitch in
this
that
is
game.
that sometimes a game will have more options than are actually being presented, and that the things that we can't see are just as important as the things that we can. If it were me and I was being faced with a decision I didn't feel comfortable making, I would take a lesson from Zork and walk through another doorway to change the coding of the scenario. There might be hidden options, or possibly even reset certain parts of the code that I could take advantage of, and it might help us hack the game.
Just
The
gotta
noise
glitch
cuts
Cursor
out,
game.
and Kayla takes a moment to
Hack
catch
it.
her breath, but then she sees a flashing arrow on the computer screen. Looking to their right, Isaac is shocked by a red and blue door that have appeared on the other side of the room. These were summoned by the game, and now they
gotta
must
choose
decide
a
which
door.
one to open. Isaac insists they should avoid red at all costs, and investigates the blue door, but when he puts his
I'm a
ear to the
blood, bro.
wood, the guy hears a voice
I'ma pick
telling him
red.
to die. It's way too creepy. So red seems to be the safer option, and as soon as Kayla makes her decision, it swings open, revealing a hallway. With no choice but to keep playing, they walk through and explore the environment,
this
but
is
that's when the
creepy.
girl hears her little brother whispering to her in the distance.
little
She
bro is
searches for
back.
him, following the sound of his voice, and they somehow end up at the exact same swimming pool where he drowned. The game is clearly playing tricks on her, and even though she knows this, the girl climbs down the ladder to rescue her
Don't
brother.
do that.
Isaac follows
He's already
after her,
gone.
stepping into the pool, but he can't see anything through the fog. He calls out to Kayla, trying to locate her, but she doesn't answer. She's more concerned with finding her brother, but suddenly hears screaming in the distance. Her friend is in trouble, and she runs up to discover him lying on the ground next to her little brother, as the game gives Kayla her next choice. She can save one person, her friend, or her brother. It's a difficult decision, but she knows her real brother is dead and walks up to her friend to check on him,
save
never
her
noticing
friend.
the child
Smart.
opening his eyes. Suddenly, the kid savagely attacks her, but she manages to overpower him and holds him down until he finally stops fighting back. It's horrifying for the girl, and she rolls off the body as the room goes back to normal. The players manage to pass the test, and that makes 3 levels down with 2 more to go.
Them eyeballs open and
this
scared
was
the crap
really
out of me.
screwed up. The evil game somehow knew she had a sibling that drowned in a public pool and wanted to use it as a form of torture. This game is getting way too personal, but she honestly should have seen it coming. If you look here on the margin of the command line, there are pictures of stuffed bunny rabbits. Anyone looking at this would know it must have something to do with children, but for Kayla, it should mean a lot more. Earlier, when she visited her mother, the woman was holding a stuffed animal that looked exactly like this, and it's very likely it belonged to her deceased son, so Kayla should have realized it would involve this part of her life somehow and mentally prepared for it. Now, for the most part, this game was pretty simple, and they handled it well. Since she knew there was no way of saving the dead, she made the right decision to save her friend, but he shouldn't have even been there in the first place. Bringing people you care about into the game will only put them in harm's way, and it would have been much smarter to go in alone, because there would be less chance of them getting hurt. It was also pretty dumb for this kid to follow her into the pool of fog. If you can't see anything and you're not making choices in the game, then you're an NPC, and that means you're walking straight into a trap. It's a terrible idea, and as her friend, this guy's time would be better spent using this rare moment to start reading the code of the game while it's being played, because it's going to reveal more information than when the game is dormant during the day. If it were me, I would be trying to crack the code, because there's a good reason to believe that it's actually a substitution cipher. From what I can tell, there are 31 characters here, and that gives us some useful information. Now, it might be coded in another language, and Romanian has a 31-letter alphabet, but it's also possible that the code is in English, and the 5 extra characters are substitutes for common coding keys, like backslash, semicolons, and parentheticals. If we start here, we can see that there are double characters in several places, and these are actually called bigrams. Statistically, the most common bigrams in the English language are L, S, E, and O in that order, and using this as a key code can help us find word patterns much more quickly. You might have seen this technique used in the Batman when he was trying to solve the Riddler's first clue. With this in mind, if these kids know the next game will happen at 2 a.m. the following morning, then we have plenty of time to write a program to help us decode it. The next morning, the girl wakes up, still haunted by what she saw last night at the game, and tells her friend about the incident that got her brother killed. Ever since that day, Kayla blames herself for what happened, and the game used that guilt against her. It's a messed up situation, and Isaac quickly changes the subject, telling her some good news. They might be able to figure out where the phone number on the game's box is registered. Putting it through a program, they find out it belongs to a company in upstate New York. They still have 10 hours until the next level starts, so they get into his car and head for the company's address, hoping to get some answers. Arriving at an abandoned building, they head inside and discover this office belonging to the creators of the Cursor game. This place might have the answers they need to cheat the system and beat the game, and the kids start looking around. Finding an old VCR, Isaac ejects a cassette tape from a machine and shows it to his friend. It's a video documenting the game's development, and wanting to know more, they decide to watch it. Putting the tape into the player, the game's creator explains that the symbols used to code the game are actually magical runes that alter reality, but if they're used against someone, they will suffer while the person who cursed them will become healthier. It sounds insane, but the guy demonstrates this by having a test subject play the game, as an injury on his arm suddenly heals itself in front of their eyes. They can't believe what they're witnessing, but the girl notices something in the video and realizes that this symbol is the command prompt. With this, they can hack the game, but just as Isaac ejects the tape, the game designer appears on the TV, welcoming them to level 4. The kids are shocked. The game is supposed to start at 2 a.m., but the game's creator explains that because the players are trying to cheat, there has to be a punishment. Thinking quickly, Isaac unplugs the power cable from the TV set, but this was his biggest mistake. He suddenly starts distorting like an image from an old television set, and Kayla must decide if she wants to rewind or fast forward. Afraid of what might happen, she turns the knob on the TV and chooses to fast forward. Her friend starts vomiting film strips on the floor, and there's nothing she can do to help. He collapses to the ground in pain, and luckily they've completed level 4, making that 4 down with 1 more to go. Okay, these kids were looking for ways to cheat, so the game decided to start early as punishment. Now, it might sound counterintuitive, but despite the consequences, the smartest approach here is to keep trying to hack this game. It's definitely risky, but the longer we are forced to play, the more people will get hurt, and finding ways to bypass the rules can give us our best chance to protect them. Now, there are some unique limitations in this level, because Isaac here has become digitized, but it isn't all bad. Kayla has to make her decision by turning this knob, but she doesn't stop to consider her how hard she should do it. If it were me, instead of twisting it all the way, I would turn it as little as possible so that I'm still technically obeying the game, but minimizing my friend's pain by making the tape go slower. Now, there's one more thing I would try in order to rescue Isaac. We saw him get trapped in a digital bubble, but you might be surprised to learn that it's not a bubble of zeros and ones. This is what's called a cathode ray tube television, and the way it works is by firing electrons across the glass tube, hitting a coating of phosphate powder on the screen that lights up when it gets hit, and it does this for each pixel. What's interesting about this is that because these are electrons, they also respond to magnetic fields. And if you've ever held a magnet up to an old CRT monitor, you'll know it looks something like this. What's happening is that the magnetic field is separating the TV's electrons and rearranging them across the magnetic field lines. Now, the reason this matters is because if we know that Isaac here is trapped in the same kind of technology, then we might be able to reach him by finding a magnet. Because the magnetic field would separate the electrons, giving us a safe way to walk through the bubble and pull him back out without getting hurt. The girl quickly runs over to check on her friend, but it's too late to save him. His injuries are too severe, and he dies right in front of her. She's the only player left, but there's one last thing she has to do. Kayla must go to these coordinates and beat the boss so this game can finally end. The girl drives deep into the woods, following her GPS until she arrives at her destination, but hasn't seen anyone for miles, and she's getting worried. Exiting the car, she walks into the forest and is surprised to find a luxurious home on the edge of the tree line. Approaching cautiously, Kayla walks inside the building where she finds a family sitting at the dinner table, but something's not right. The man invites her to join them, recognizing her as a player, and asks why she's here. Confused, the girl tells him the game sent her and wants to know if he's also a player. He explains that he only played up to level 2, but made a deal with the game to distribute copies of it in exchange for leaving his family alone and quitting the game. Suddenly, the girl's phone goes off, and when she checks it, Kayla discovers she's made it to the final level. Standing up, the girl shows him that he is the final level boss, with her last choice to decide between him or her, and there will only be one survivor. Acting quickly, she goes for a knife on the table, but the man grabs a plate and smashes it over her head. Surprisingly, he clutches his face in pain, and they realize that whatever damage they inflict on each other gets transferred. The girl's about to stab him, but he slams her head into the table, sending her to the floor. That's when his son comes out with a gun and fires it, completely missing the girl. The mother grabs the gun out of her son's hand and heads outside, making it clear that she's going to kill her husband by proxy for the horrible things he's done to his family. Looking for revenge, the woman fires the gun, but it knocks the girl down into the pool, and she can't swim back up. The man runs out grabbing the gun and disarms his wife, but it's already too late. Suddenly, he starts vomiting water, and the man drowns to death, making Kayla the official winner, and that's all 5 levels completed. With the final boss killed, the mother helps bandage up Kayla's wounds, but when the girl looks at her phone, she notices a special symbol flashing on the screen. It's the magical runes that power the game's curse, and now it's hers to use against anyone she wants. Days later, the girl sends a message to her mom's boyfriend and asks him if he wants to spend money on her. The guy immediately says yes, agreeing to let her be in charge, and Kayla decides it's time for him to be punished once and for all. Before she has a chance to finish her task, someone calls her and she realizes it's the creator of the game. He asks her who she'll use her new powers on, and the girl promises to punish only those who deserve it, dooming every single Karen on the planet.
But what do you think? How would you beat Choose or Die? Let me know with a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos like this. Until next time, have a damn good day.
You too, fam. Hey yo, she got like a video game version of a Death Note, fam. Y'all got me of that world, bro. My summary says she's gonna punish all the Karens. Oh man, creepy stuff, bro. Very creepy stuff, especially with like seeing her, you know, dead brother, bro. Hey, the mom's boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, whatever, he had it coming, bro. He had it coming. Man, what would y'all do with that power? Let me know in the comment section. This was a banger of a video. Great video as always by Cinema Summary. Let me know what y'all thought of my reaction in the comment section. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Thank y'all so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.